Tonight, the violent earthquake striking San Diego County, and the entire region is now bracing for aftershocks. The powerful quake rattling homes and interrupting work days. What we know at this hour about damage reports and the concern about those aftershocks. The man under arrest tonight for attempted murder, accused of breaking into the governor of Pennsylvania's home and throwing Molotov cocktails inside, all while the governor, his wife, and their 4 children were asleep inside. We're standing by to hear from Judge Esther Salas. Her son was killed after he answered the door to her home in 2020. What she thinks about this heightened threat environment. Plus,
how can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it.
El Salvador's president says he cannot return him. The U.S. says it's up to El Salvador. And the Supreme Court says Kilmar Abrego Garcia was illegally sent there. So what comes next? We're standing by to be joined by his attorney. Plus,
the joy that I had when I got to the hospital was gone.
Mothers and their newborns are being tested for drugs without their knowledge. In tonight's Prime Focus, our investigation into how and why it's happening and how one mother is fighting back.
No, hold on to me.
The harrowing rescue, all caught on camera. A woman trapped on the edge of a cliff.
2, 1, ignition.
And today, for the first time in 60 years, an all-female crew blasted off into space. Katy Perry and the star-studded crew reflect on their brief but historic trip into the cosmos.
I feel super connected to love. So connected to love. I think this experience has shown me you never know how much love is inside of you.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with the suspect in court late today, facing attempted murder and terrorism charges after authorities say he firebombed the home of Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro while the family was asleep. These are the charred remains of the governor's residence. Police say this man scaled a fence and firebombed the governor's mansion using Molotov cocktails and gasoline to torch the first floor, just hours before the Shapiros celebrated the first night of Passover in that very same room.
This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. And I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other.
Suspect Cody Balmer is now under arrest. Authorities say the attack was premeditated and that Balmer harbored hatred toward Governor Shapiro. Judge Esther Salas, whose son was tragically killed after he answered his family's door in 2020, is standing by to join us. But first, ABC's chief investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky reports from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania with the latest.
Tonight, this is the suspect police are calling a domestic terrorist. They say Cody Balmer scaled a fence and firebombed Governor Josh Shapiro's residence while the governor and his family were sleeping upstairs. These images show the damage from 2 Molotov cocktails made from beer bottles and gasoline that prosecutors say Balmer took from his lawnmower. The piano room and part of the dining room destroyed, chairs and tables charred, other objects melted. In the same spot hours earlier, the Shapiros celebrating the first night of Passover.
Lori and I are overwhelmed by the prayers and the messages of support that we've received from all across Pennsylvania and all across the United States.
A senior law enforcement official tells ABC News authorities are investigating whether this attack could have been motivated by the governor's Jewish faith. Shapiro and his family were gathered Saturday evening with 24 others. He shared this photo of his Seder plate. Hours later, state troopers banging on the door to get everyone out.
Chief, had the door not been closed, could the fire have spread further and deeper inside the mansion, putting the governor and his family at risk?
If that door wasn't closed, the fire would have spread and would have definitely put the governor at even greater risk.
This is the part of the fence the suspect breached to make his way inside the governor's residence, where he set the fire with an incendiary device. Investigators cut away this part of the fence so they could do DNA testing.
Today, the governor surveyed the damage. Police say Balmer fled the scene and later turned himself in. Authorities say the 38-year-old mechanic had a plan, walking for approximately 1 hour from his residence to the governor's residence, allegedly while harboring hatred towards Governor Shapiro. Asked by police what he would have done if the governor found him inside, Balmer allegedly replied, would have beaten him with his hammer. In the Oval Office, President Trump on the incident today.
The attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
Just moments ago, bomber seen here, handcuffed and shackled at the waist, escorted by police on his way into a Pennsylvania courtroom to face charges of attempted murder and terrorism.
Aaron Katersky joins us now from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Aaron, the suspect we know was just in court. What more are we learning tonight about his potential motives?
And he didn't say much other than to tell the judge, Linsey, that he did not have any history of mental health problems. But authorities are ruling out nothing when it comes to the search for motive. They'll look at his medical history, his financial history, certain social media posts he's made about politicians from both major political parties. They're also still checking to see whether Governor Shapiro's Jewish faith may have had any role in motivating this attack that, as you can see, has still left the building scarred. That's the point, Linsey, where, according to authorities, bomber broke the windows and threw a Molotov cocktail inside.
Aaron Katersky for us. Our thanks to you as always. Joining us now is U.S. District Court Judge Esther Salas of New Jersey. Judge, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Unfortunately, you know all too well the idea of your family being targeted. It was your son Daniel who answered the door on that fateful day, 2020, and was fatally shot. Your husband was also injured. Because you have had that kind of intimate experience with this kind of violence, what was your reaction to hearing about the Governor Shapiro's scenario?
Obviously, my immediate reaction was to say a prayer and to send good thoughts to the governor and his family. Being attacked in a place that you call your sanctuary, your home, where people most often feel they're safest and most comfortable. I can't imagine how, well, I can actually.
You can.
Yeah,
you can.
I can, and I can say that the only thing I would continue to, advise the governor to do is to stay with the people that he loves and to continue to hold, them close and to do everything he can to protect himself and his family, especially in the times that we're living now.
You mentioned the times we're living. What do you think about this climate at this point where it seems like we're seeing this ratcheting up of threats and violence and rhetoric against those who are trying to uphold the law?
I'm now dealing with, and my colleagues across this country are dealing with unprecedented attacks in the form of intimidation. We have seen these attacks coming from people that we never would have imagined. I've often talked about the violence against the judiciary being a bonfire that's been burning for some time. But it feels like people in positions of power, leadership, people with large social platforms are throwing, fuel on this fire and lumber on this fire and accelerants, to be quite frankly, and to be quite frank with you on that, Linsey. I don't see us those in power trying to tone this down.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel, and are you concerned that it feels that the threat has never been greater against the judiciary when you have, for example, President Trump, who was rallying against, calling for the impeachment of the federal judge who ruled against his deportation, his flights. Again, just today, you had the Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, who said federal judges should stop meddling in national security matters. Have you ever seen threats at this level against federal judges?
I think we're in unprecedented times. I think we can look to statements that are coming out from our leaders and these positions of power and say we're in new territory. When we see members of Congress calling for the impeachment of judges for doing their jobs. When we again see these pizza deliveries now that are being hundreds of pizzas are being delivered to the personal homes of judges all throughout this country.
So and one of them from your son's name?
Let me just put this in perspective. We had heard about pizzas being delivered to judges' houses. And that says what? I know where you live. Well, just this past week, just this past Monday, I learned that pizzas were being delivered to judges, and the sender on the order form, you know, they were ordering online, was Daniel Anderl. My son is now being used to really send threats to judges. And so when people are trying to weaponize my son and his legacy to send out threats and acts of intimidation against judges, that's totally against what Daniel was. He was love and light. And so I'm here. I'm here to encourage our leaders, Republican, Democrats, Independents, to be champions for justice, to speak up.
And we just have a few seconds left, but tell me about what you have there in your binder.
It's Daniel. I carry him with me everywhere I go, and he is my light and my love, and he will continue to shine his love and light on everyone because he lived for that and continues to live on in spirit to spread light and love wherever he goes and wherever we go.
Thank you for sharing your son with us and your insight. We so appreciate your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having
Thanks
me.
so much,
Thank
Judge.
you for covering this story.
Of course. Now to the strong earthquake that rattled Southern California today. A 5.2 magnitude quake with an epicenter north of San Diego. This monitor captured the moment the sudden movement woke a sleeping baby. And this is just fascinating. Look at these elephants at the San Diego Zoo. Instinctively, they surround their young to protect them during the shaking, forming what is called an alert circle. Here's ABC's Stephanie Ramos with more.
Tonight, families in Southern California bracing for aftershocks after a 5.2 magnitude earthquake struck near San Diego.
Breaking news.
Our affiliate KGTV breaking into programming.
We are bringing you breaking news here at 10:16, and you may have felt it, a pretty strong earthquake.
Home surveillance cameras catching the tremor. Watch as it shakes this baby awake. Everyone's okay.
We're swaying like this in the elevator.
Reggie Novinario was 35 floors up working on this downtown San Diego skyscraper.
Were you worried about your life?
Yeah. As everybody was. The guys on top, they're on the side of the building and they could fall off.
The 5.2 quake's epicenter near Julian, California, a mountain town about 60 miles northeast of San Diego. At the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, frightened elephants instinctively forming what's known as an alert circle to protect the herd. The quake sending boulders onto roads, authorities still assessing damage tonight.
Our thanks to Stephanie Ramos. Now to the immigration standoff over Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man wrongly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled the U.S. must facilitate his return, but today in the Oval Office, El Salvador's president called the question of returning him to the U.S. preposterous. Abrego Garcia's attorney is standing by, but first, here's our Terry Moran tonight with the latest developments.
At the White House today, President Trump and the president of El Salvador. And at the center of their agenda, one man, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man, a Salvadoran immigrant, husband and father, whom the Trump administration admits was mistakenly deported to that notorious prison in El Salvador.
And he's done a fantastic job.
Today, Salvadoran President Inayu said he's got no plans to send Abrego Garcia back home to the U.S. and his family.
How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous.
The Supreme Court unanimously ruled late last week that Abrego Garcia's removal to El Salvador was, quote, illegal, and ordered the Trump administration to facilitate his return. The administration claims Abrego Garcia is a member of the MS-13 gang, but a federal judge said last week they have offered, quote, no evidence to back that up, and he has no criminal record here or in El Salvador. After that ruling, President Trump told reporters this.
I have great respect for the Supreme Court. If they said to bring him back, I would tell them to bring him back.
But now the administration argues that federal courts have no authority to direct the executive branch on how to conduct foreign relations. And Attorney General Pam Bondi said today that bringing Abrego Garcia back would be up to El Salvador.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us.
And over the weekend, 10 more migrants were sent to that prison in El Salvador. Trump said he likes it, even for U.S. citizens, suggesting Americans could be next.
I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but We also have homegrown criminals. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that.
And staying on that note, I want to bring Terry Moran in for us now. Terry, we're also getting details on something that happened before the reporters were brought into the Oval Office. What did the president say then?
Well, it's very interesting, Lindsay. So you heard Trump talk about sending Americans to that El Salvadoran prison, and you might think, oh, he's just joking. He likes to rile up his opponents. It's that kind of thing. But before those reporters and cameras were in the Oval Office, a member of the Salvadoran delegation was live streaming, and Trump can be heard on that live stream saying to President Bukele, quote, "The homegrowns are next, the homegrowns," and suggesting that Bukele should build 5 more prisons, to which Bukele laughed, and then Trump said, quote, "It's not big enough." Lindsay?
All right, very interesting developments there. Terry Moran for us from the White House. Thanks so much, Terry.
You bet.
And joining us now is Benjamin Osorio, attorney for Kilmar Borrego Garcia. Benjamin, thank you so much for joining us tonight. What's your reaction to the Trump administration saying that they simply don't have the authority to, quote, forcibly extract Kilmar from El Salvador?
Well, thank you very much for having me. First of all, nobody's asking the Trump administration to forcibly extract Mr. Borrego from El Salvador. What we're asking is exactly what the Supreme Court told them. Let's facilitate his return. And we do this all the time. I personally have worked with DHS before to facilitate the return of several other clients who were deported and then won their cases at circuit court levels or at the Supreme Court, and ICE facilitated their return. So we're not asking anybody to do anything illegal. We're asking them to follow the law.
Now, on the other hand, Salvadorian President Nayib Bukele said at the White House today that he doesn't have the power to return Borrego Garcia. If not DHS and not El Salvador, then who does have the power here?
I don't know. It feels a little bit like the Spider-Man meme where everybody's pointing at everybody else. But at the same time, I mean, we are renting space from the Salvadorans. We are paying them to house these individuals. So we could stop payment and allow them, to be returned to us. At the same time, we get prisoners swaps from other countries all the time. Our Department of State works with other countries all the time for detained U.S. citizens. So this is not a new thing that we're asking the government to do. We're just asking them to follow the Supreme Court's order.
Your colleague, another attorney representing Borrego Garcia, said a few days ago that he was confident he'd be returned to the U.S. Do you still feel the same way?
I mean, I'm worried about the rule of law. I'm worried about our Constitution holding. I'm worried about due process. So, at this point, I'm optimistic to see what happens in the federal court hearing tomorrow morning. And I hope that that produces some results. And I hope that that lights a fire under the government to comply with the Supreme Court's order.
Just on a practical level, what do you surmise might be the Trump administration's benefit from not returning him?
I mean, this is an administration that never likes to say that they did anything wrong. I think this is just the continued practice of that. If they were to bring him back, that shows and establishes that this was a mistake and also sets a precedent that they might have to facilitate the return of other individuals. So I think, if anything, they're fighting this being something that they have to apologize for.
Last week, we had the opportunity to chat with his wife, Jennifer. How is she holding up at this point?
I mean, the family is worried. I mean, you would be very worried also if your loved one was sitting in CCOT. So, I mean, we're concerned for his safety. She's concerned for his safety. And all we want is for them to comply with the Supreme Court order, bring him back so that she can be reunited with her husband.
Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff for Domestic Policy, said your client was not mistakenly deported, and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said that he had multiple charges and encounters with individuals and that trafficking was found in his background. Have you received any evidence that remotely supports these claims?
It's very funny that they're willing to say this stuff when they're not under oath or when they don't have a duty of candor to the court or the tribunal. So we've seen nothing in their court filings that establish this stuff. So if they have it, put it up. So, I mean, here we are fighting the same fight again and again. They keep saying these allegations without any proof to support it. So we're happy to look at any evidence they have, but to date, nothing has been filed that would show he has any affiliation with MS-13. He has no criminal record, and they've said in their court filings that this was done in error. They've not gone through the process to get rid of his withholding of removal order, and if they want to do that, there is a process for them to do that.
Give me a sense of what the process is at this point when you have the Supreme Court rule. Okay, United States, you must facilitate his return. If the administration does not do that, is there any punishment or reaction?
I mean, there's definitely a mechanism for them to hold the government in contempt. That can be borne out through various ways. That can be borne out through detention of certain officials. There can be ethics complaints against the attorneys representing the government if they're not, honoring their ethical duties or their candor to the court. So, I mean, there are tools available. It becomes tricky, though, because who's going to enforce that? You know, the U.S. Marshals fall under DOJ. Obviously, that falls under the Attorney General. So, I mean, we're in a delicate place right now.
Understood. Benjamin Osorio, attorney for Kilmar Abrega Garcia, we thank you so much for your time tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Staying on this topic, El Salvador's president, as we reported, was at the White House today. But who is Nayib Bukele, and how popular is he in El Salvador? Our Matt Rivers reports.
We're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we will do it.
El Salvador's millennial president, Nayib Bukele, once described himself as the world's coolest dictator. He was first elected president in 2019, a third-party candidate of the Ghana Party. His platform, anti-corruption. And his popularity from social media being one of his main allies in that race. But he made international headlines that year when he brought soldiers into the Legislative Assembly and told the voting members to approve a loan for new equipment or be summoned back in 7 days. And when he made Bitcoin legal tender in El Salvador, a move critics called political marketing, he once again entered the spotlight. Bukele's love for flashy political stunts quickly became his global identifier. But he is most known for his crackdown on gangs in El Salvador, a move that's made major changes on the ground in the country. In 2022, under a state of emergency, law enforcement was able to detain and arrest anyone suspected of gang activity without a warrant, an effort to curb the homicide rate, which at one point was more than 6,000 a year. But the move sparked concerns around human rights, with NGOs documenting cases of torture against detainees and even more than 300 deaths.
Sometimes they say that we imprisoned thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions.
But this did not stop Bukele from inviting the Miss Universe pageant to El Salvador, showcasing a new El Salvador and distracting from local criticisms of the president's methods. Still, Bukele remains extremely popular in his home country. He won re-election for a second term, a feat that is technically forbidden in the Constitution, but was allowed by a branch of the Supreme Court that was packed with members chosen by his own party. That move worrying those in the human rights community, saying that Nayib Bukele may be sliding toward a dictatorship. But in the U.S., he has become a media darling.
They say globalism comes to die at CPAC. I'm here to tell you that in El Salvador, it's already dead.
And now, as El Salvador has accepted more than 200 Venezuelan migrants to their infamous Supermax prison, Secot, Bukele says he'd even accept American criminals as well.
I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. We're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good.
Cementing himself as President Trump's key ally in Central America.
Our thanks to Matt Rivers for that. Now to that deadly helicopter crash in the Hudson River. New York Helicopter Tours, the company involved, is shutting down operations immediately, according to the FAA. Earlier today, divers pulled the main rotor from the river, critical in the search for clues after Thursday's crash that killed all 6 people on board, which included an executive from Spain, his wife, and 3 children. The NTSB has said the helicopter was not equipped with any flight recorders. NTSB investigators are also working through the wreckage of a small plane crash in upstate New York that also tragically killed another family. Among the victims, Corinna Graw, the 2022 recipient of the prestigious NCAA Woman of the Year award and former soccer player at MIT. Her parents, brother, and partner were also among the 6 victims killed. Officials stated that there were deteriorating weather conditions near the scene of the crash Saturday, which happened 10 miles from the Columbia County Airport in Copake, New York. We turn next to President Trump's tariffs. Today, President Trump signaled the plans to impose new taxes on imported pharmaceuticals and on computer chips essential to powering everything from cell phones to cars. He's also agreed to a temporary exemption for smartphones, computers, and other electronics from most of the staggering 145% tariffs he put on products imported from China. He has not said how long that exemption will last and has urged China's president to negotiate a deal. Next tonight, to that star-studded all-female Blue Origin flight crew, including singer Katy Perry and TV journalist Gayle King, blasting off from West Texas, heading to the edge of space. Gayle King's best friend, Oprah, crying at liftoff, parachutes bringing the capsule down, and what the passengers said right after. ABC's Maria Villarreal reports from West Texas tonight.
2, 1, ignition.
Tonight, a star-studded all-female crew blasting off into space.
Liftoff. New Shepard has cleared the tower.
6 women, including pop star Katy Perry and journalist Gayle King, launching from Texas on board billionaire Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin New Shepard rocket. Gayle King's best friend Oprah crying as she watched the spaceship soar.
Oprah watching her best friend go to space.
The incredible moment, the women experiencing 4 minutes in zero gravity, floating.
Look at the moon. That's amazing. Wow, look at the blue line.
Perry, whose daughter's name is Daisy, showing off the flower. Then the capsule safely parachuting back home, touching down in a cloud of dust.
Congratulations. Welcome back to Earth.
I feel super connected to love.
How are you hoping that this moment affects change for other people moving forward?
I hope they can see the unity that we modeled and replicate that and understand that we weren't just taking up space, we were making space for the future.
Kissing the ground there. Our thanks to Maria for that. Coming up, the dispute with an Uber driver that led to 2 American college students into 2 weeks in a Danish jail. But first, testing moms and their newborn babies without their knowledge, leading some families to become separated. In tonight's Prime Focus, what exactly is the test and report, and is it legal?
Using a toxicology test or a drug test should not be done without a woman's consent.
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking about prescriptions used to help people with addiction stay clean. But advocates say these legal drugs are leading to some families being separated. In tonight's Prime Focus, Eva Pilgrim looks into a practice known as test and report and how one mother is working to change the law.
When Nicole Costin and her partner found out they were expecting, they couldn't have been happier. She says she had been in recovery from opioid addiction for over a decade. She became addicted after she was prescribed pain medication for a surgery.
You know, I was going down a really dark road of using and abusing my medication. So I was introduced to Suboxone by my primary care doctor. It probably saved my life.
Suboxone is an FDA-approved medication for opioid use disorder, a class of drugs also known as MOUDs. They help people stop using. Nicole says the medication helped her take back control of her life. She had her first son and enrolled in school again. During her second pregnancy, her doctor switched her to a similar medication called Subutex. When her water broke, Nicole and her partner went to Glens Falls Hospital in New York. She says she told the staff she was on an MOUD.
They then proceeded to take a urine from me, which wasn't out of the ordinary.
Nicole says she overheard a nurse say they were still waiting for the results of a urine drug test.
I was upset that nobody informed me that they were doing that, but I didn't have any reason to be concerned about it.
But that didn't last long. Soon afterwards, she says a staff member came into her room.
I'm here to inform you, you failed your test for cocaine and PCP. And I was in shock. That's impossible. You have the wrong urine, go check again. You have my blood, go test my blood.
Experts say Subutex wouldn't have shown up on a drug test as PCP, cocaine, or even an opioid.
Somebody please explain this to me. The doctor, he had said to me, well, we test people who come in here on Suboxone and Subutex every time. The joy that I had when I got to the hospital was gone.
Nicole says that shortly after her son was born, the staff took him away to collect his urine and test it for drugs.
You know, in this moment, I'm like, what? you know, no, you can't do that, please don't do that. They didn't ask for my consent, nor did they explain it to me. They just did it.
Nicole is suing the hospital, alleging medical malpractice and that after she disclosed her use of an MOUD, she was denied equal treatment in violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Her lawyers say that if her discrimination claim is successful, Nicole's case could serve as a model for others with similar experiences. The lawsuit alleges that the hospital knowingly reported false positives to Child Protective Services, despite having a second drug test come back negative. When CPS showed up, they made Nicole take a third drug test, according to the lawsuit, before she and her baby were allowed to leave the hospital.
Child Protective Services was at our house moments after we walked inside. She wanted to talk to my son. She asked him intrusive, invasive questions.
According to the lawsuit, CPS closed the case. A Glens Falls hospital spokesperson told ABC News they cannot offer any additional comment on pending litigation, but in a court filing, the hospital denies many of Nicole's assertions and deny any wrongdoing. Nicole's allegations are not isolated. ABC News spoke with over 30 experts across the country, from lawyers to doctors, social workers, and women who have experienced what is commonly known as test and report. They've described a widespread practice of healthcare workers testing the urine of pregnant women and their newborns for substances without their consent. If the test comes back positive, they're often reported to Child Protective Services. Federal law requires states to report the number of substance-affected newborns to the government and provide those newborns with a plan of safe care.
They do not require that Child Protective Services become involved in any instance of substance-affected newborns or a positive drug test result.
It's up to states to make their own laws about pregnancy and substance use. New York doesn't require testing and reporting. Only 4 states require it for mothers or their newborns in certain circumstances. In most states, the decision to test is made by hospitals and their workers.
Some hospitals have no policy at all. Some hospitals will require drug testing for all pregnant patients who come through their doors.
ABC News obtained data from New York State through a Freedom of Information request. It shows there have been nearly 10,000 reports of substance-affected infants to Child Protective Services since 2019. Numbers show an overall decrease in reports involving MOUDs, but there have been 272 during that same time period. Medical professionals consistently submitted the second highest number of reports, nearly 3,000. The data does not show how many of those reports are the result of non-consensual drug testing. Mount Sinai's Bridge program treats pregnant and postpartum patients with substance use disorder. Dr. Leah Habersham is the OBGYN and addiction specialist who runs it. She studies disparities in who hospital workers choose to test for substances.
When they were testing women and just picking and choosing who they would test, there was a lot of bias in that, and that they were oftentimes testing women because they were, you know, maybe a minority, Black, Hispanic, or of a certain socioeconomic class.
Are they allowed to test women without their knowledge?
Using a toxicology test or a drug test should not be done without a woman's consent.
What happens to the baby if Child Protective Services is called?
Oftentimes they are separated.
I imagine there are a lot of these providers, the doctors and nurses, they're doing what they think is best, right? They're coming at it with this idea of protecting the mom and the baby. They want to make sure the baby's okay. What would you say to them?
When I was just a generalist, I didn't know what to do if I got a positive test, you know? And I think it's very common that that's the feeling of many physicians, because it's just not something that we're taught about.
After realizing the discrepancies involved in discretionary testing, Mount Sinai changed its policy to asking women a series of questions to screen for substance use and refer them to treatment if needed. Dr. Habersham's research found that there was no significant racial disparity after the change. But Mount Sinai is just one hospital system. There are ongoing efforts in several states, including New York, to challenge the legality of non-consensual drug testing and to pass laws requiring informed consent.
It is really critical that New York State pass legislation to strengthen protections for pregnant people.
Last year, a bill requiring informed consent before drug testing pregnant women and their newborns failed to pass in New York. Lawmakers who didn't support the bill argued it would put too many restrictions on healthcare workers. The bill has been reintroduced in the current legislative session. As for Nicole, she says she is still recovering from her experience.
What I went through was torture, and I never want anybody to feel the way that we felt in that hospital. There needs to be accountability.
Perhaps change is on the way. Our thanks to Eva Pilgrim for that. Coming up, how an injured hiker managed to call for help all while clinging to life on the side of a cliff. And Americans spent a record amount of money out of pocket to file their taxes last tax season. Ahead of tomorrow's filing deadline, we take a look at how other countries do it cheaper and faster. By the numbers. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone. Tomorrow is April 15th. You know what that means. For most Americans, midnight tomorrow is the deadline to file a federal tax return. So let's take a look at our head scratcher of a tax system by the numbers. Last tax season, individual taxpayers spent an average of 13 hours filing taxes. Those filing for a business spent twice that much time. And the average taxpayer paid $290 out of pocket to file, an all-time high. That's according to the National Taxpayers Union Foundation. And that time spent on tax compliance adds up to an estimated $316 billion in lost productivity. But not all countries do it this way. Estonia, for example, boasts an efficient tax system in which 95% of taxes are filed online, and the process can be completed in as little as 3 minutes. On the Faroe Islands, a self-governing region of Denmark, the 2024 tax return form is 2 pages long. Most taxpayers don't even have to submit a return. Their centralized tax system automatically collects taxes and distributes welfare payments. Back home, taxpayers can use the direct file system on their IRS website to file federal taxes for free, but only in 25 states, and not everyone's eligible. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 helped millions of Americans avoid itemizing, a time saver for many, but that law is set to expire at the end of the year. And still ahead, what caused the massive explosion in Austin, Texas that injured several people and damaged more than a dozen homes? And her hit single is the most viewed video from a female afro-pop artist ever. Yemi Alade, best known as Mama Africa, is here. How her latest work is supercharged with African storytelling and inspiring the next generation. The harrowing rescue from the side of a cliff as a hiker clings on for life. What caused the explosion in Austin, Texas that damaged dozens of homes? And another milestone for golfer Rory McIlroy. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
Oh, hold on to me.
The Riverside County Sheriff's Aviation Unit made a harrowing rescue on the side of a mountain on California's Pacific Crest Trail. The unit was called to help a stranded hiker who sent an emergency text to 911 through an emergency communications device. Videos show a rescuer lifting the injured hiker from her precarious spot to the top of the mountain and then safely into the helicopter. NFL hopeful and former LSU wide receiver Kyron Lacy died by apparent suicide on Sunday, one day before a grand jury hearing on charges of negligent homicide. The Harris County Sheriff's Office said officers were pursuing Lacy in a police chase after he reportedly argued with a family member and discharged a firearm into the ground. Lacy's vehicle eventually crashed, after which officers discovered he had shot himself. The NFL draft prospect was facing charges for causing a head-on crash in Louisiana in December that killed another driver. 2 American college students have been released from a Danish jail 2 weeks after they were detained following a dispute with an Uber driver. A spokesperson for Owen Ray's family said Ray and a friend were in an Uber on March 31st, but entered the wrong destination. They canceled the trip when the driver refused to take them elsewhere. The driver allegedly caught up to them and said he wasn't paid, leading to an argument and a physical confrontation. Police said the students were arrested on common assault charges. Uber told ABC News the driver reported he was assaulted. Multiple people were injured in a reported house explosion in Austin, Texas. The 2-story house where the explosion happened collapsed, with the house next door sustaining collapse damage and a number of other surrounding homes impacted as well. Officials said a total of 6 people were injured, 2 of them critically. The cause of the explosion is under investigation. Pfizer has stopped development of its experimental weight loss drug danuglipron. The company said a patient experienced a liver injury, possibly tied to the drug, during a trial, and said the complications ended after they stopped using it. Pfizer was aiming to bring the drug to phase 3 testing, but said it decided to end development after reviewing clinical data and input from regulators.
The long journey is over. McIlroy has his masterpiece.
It was a long-awaited moment for Rory McIlroy in Augusta. The golfer won the first Masters tournament of his long career Sunday after a dramatic sudden-death playoff against Justin Rose. It was the only Grand Slam tournament that McIlroy had yet to win, making him one of just 6 golfers ever to win a career Grand Slam.
The WNBA draft is fully underway, with the #1 overall draft pick coming as no surprise. UConn women's basketball and star-studded national champion Paige Bueckers headed to the Dallas Wings. The UConn star is fresh off leading the Huskies to their 12th national championship. Bueckers is among 16 prospects at tonight's draft. The draft, held here in New York at the Shed, has fans in attendance for the 2nd consecutive year. Our next guest is an afro-pop legend, one of the biggest singers to ever come from the continent of Africa. And for the last 2 decades, her music has become globally recognized. Best known as Mama Africa, Grammy-nominated singer Yemi Alade is also the first female afro-pop star to hit more than 100 million views on YouTube with her popular hit single Johnny, which is now the most viewed video from a female afro-pop artist ever. Yemi is also known for her contributions to Beyoncé's visual album Black is King. Most recently, Yemi produced, wrote, and sang the theme song for new cartoon series Inayu, a superhero story inspired by Nigerian culture and mythology, featuring an all-African cast. Yemi's latest single, You Are, is a powerful reminder of what the show is about. Take a look at the music video debut of the song.
Growing stronger and stronger, can you hear them, can you hear them say?
And joining us now is none other than Miss Yemi Alade. Yemi, thank you so much for coming on the
Pleasure's
show.
all mine. Thank you.
So give us a sense. We just heard You Are, a little portion of it there. What went into making that album as far as the power and the culture of the storytelling into that anthem?
Honestly, I would say all the glory belongs to the creator himself, Roy Okupe. And the fact that he had the vision of creating this animation that highlights the Yoruba culture, as well as the methodology, and most especially the fact that it speaks to the girl child. And how this young lady, Inayu, discovers her inner power, and she eventually unleashes that and unleashes greatness along the line, not just for herself, but for everyone around her.
So how would you say the characters then in turn inspired you?
Wow. I think they also inspired my little Yemi so much because these are the images and the kind of cartoons that I never got to watch as a kid. I mean, I had the 7 a.m. Daily calendar to watch a cartoon in my house because, I mean, at home we had a routine to watch TV. But I was watching Spider-Man and watching Power Rangers and all of that, but I never watched something like this. It's authentic. It's truly from the Yoruba land, and the accents are true. And a lot of the situations are very relatable.
And how significant in particular is this representation, not only for Yoruba, but also Nigerian culture? Because as you mentioned, even for many African Americans, it's just recently that we've started seeing ourselves globally on a national scale with regard to superheroes, with Black Panther, for example.
Yes. I feel like this stands as an example to everyone out there that it's important to be original and be yourself, because that is what Inayu is about, truly being yourself. When you're yourself, I feel like you can withstand any kind of weather. I am a perfect example of that.
You really have become a cultural ambassador. Do you see ultimately this series doing the same?
100%. You know, when it's authentic and original, nothing can stop it. And like a lot of people say, Afrobeats and everything African and Nigerian seems to be circulating the world, and everybody seems to be falling in love with the culture. But I'll say that we have been in love with this for a long time. Y'all need to catch up real quick. Catch up. Yes.
And you mentioned Afrobeats. There are so many different sounds that you uniquely weave and languages that you speak. And so tell us how this all really comes together in your artistry.
I'm just one of the few blessed artists that sing in several languages. I sing obviously in English and then in Pidgin English, which is a type of English from Nigeria. My mom and dad are from different states in Nigeria, so I sing in Yoruba and then in Igbo. And I still go ahead to sing in Swahili, which is East African, Portuguese as well, because some African countries are they speak Portuguese as their national, language. And I've just really been having fun with the language, and I think it's a good time to be alive.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Yemi's song, You Are, is available to listen on all music streaming platforms, and you can watch HBO Max series Inayu out now on Cartoon Network and also Max. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.